There's a microbe living inside you right now that might be smarter than your doctor. Seriously. It doesn't have a brain, it doesn't have a nervous system, and yet it can manipulate your emotions, rewire your immune system, and according to a handful of terrified neuroscientists, it might even be influencing your spiritual experiences. This isn't science fiction. It's happening in your gut as you read this. Scientists have a boring name for it. They call it Mycobacterium vaccae. But the researchers who study it, they gave it a different name, a terrifying one, a hopeful one. They call it the God bacteria. And once you hear what this thing can do, you're going to start questioning everything you thought you knew about your own free will. Let's rewind to 1995. A scientist named Dr. Mary O'Brien is working with cancer patients in London, not in a lab, out in the field. She's doing something that sounds almost cruel on the surface. She's injecting terminally ill patients with a dead bacteria found in soil. Sounds crazy, right? Her patients are exhausted, depressed. Their quality of life is basically zero. She's not trying to cure their cancer, she's just trying to help them breathe a little easier before the end. But then, something strange happens. It's not the breathing that improves, it's their mood. Patients who couldn't get out of bed suddenly want to go for walks. Patients who stopped talking start laughing with the nurses. One patient, a woman who had basically given up, starts asking about the weather. She wants to feel the sun. Dr. O'Brien is confused. She's not giving them antidepressants. She's not giving them therapy. She's injecting them with dirt. She goes back to the lab. She runs the tests again. And what she finds, well, it should have changed medicine forever. That dead bacteria she was injecting, when it gets inside you, even dead, it triggers a massive release of serotonin. But not just any serotonin, it triggers a specific cocktail of feel-good chemicals that in animal trials produced effects stronger than some prescription antidepressants. Here's the kicker. When they gave this bacteria to mice, the mice didn't just get happier, they got smarter. They navigated mazes twice as fast, they showed less anxiety, they even looked healthier, fur glossier, movement smoother. It was like the bacteria was upgrading their operating system. And that's when the nickname stuck, the God bacteria, because it seemed to be playing God with their biology. But hold on, we need to pump the brakes for a second. If it's that powerful, why haven't you heard of it? Why isn't it in every pharmacy? Why isn't your doctor prescribing you a little jar of dirt? Well, because of one tiny, terrifying detail. Remember how I said the bacteria was dead in those trials? They tried it on humans again a few years later. This time they used a live version, and something happened that made the researchers slam the brakes on the whole project. The patients started having experiences. Not just feeling happy, not just feeling relaxed, they started reporting vivid dreams, a sense of deep, unexplainable peace, a feeling of connection to something bigger than themselves. One patient, a hardcore atheist, described it as a spiritual awakening. Another said, and I quote, "It felt like I was held by my mother." This is where the science gets uncomfortable. The bacteria wasn't just tweaking their serotonin, it was interacting with their vagus nerve, the superhighway between your gut and your brain. It was essentially tapping into the mainframe. And here's the part that'll keep you up at night. We know it can do this because of how it evolved. This bacteria wants to be inside a mammal. It evolved in the soil, yes, but its ideal environment, your gut. And to get there, it figured out how to make you want to be outside. It figured out how to make you want to garden, to dig, to play in the dirt. It makes you happy, so you'll go outside and inhale more of it. It makes you social, so you'll share it with others. It quite literally hijacks your behavior to ensure its own survival. Sound familiar? We've known about parasites that do this for years. Toxoplasma makes mice lose their fear of cats, so the cat will eat them and spread the parasite. But this is different.
This makes you feel good. It makes you feel connected. It makes you feel like you found God. So here's the question you have to ask yourself. How much of your happiness is actually you? We like to think we're in control. We like to think our moods are a result of our circumstances, our choices, our mindset. But what if your sudden burst of joy on a sunny day isn't the sunshine? What if it's the bacteria in the dust kicked up by the wind? What if the reason you feel so calm after gardening isn't just the mindfulness of it, but a microscopic entity literally drugging your brain? Now, before you freak out and start boiling your hands in bleach, you need to hear the other side of this story. Because this bacteria isn't just a manipulator. It might also be the missing piece to a health crisis we've been ignoring for decades. We are, right now, living in the most sanitized era in human history. We use antibacterial soap, we pasteurize everything, we seal ourselves in climate-controlled boxes and never touch soil. We have, collectively, declared war on the microbial world, and we're losing that war. Autoimmune diseases are skyrocketing, anxiety is at an all-time high, allergies are so common we think it's normal to sneeze through spring. What if we didn't just wipe out the bad bacteria? What if we wiped out the good ones too? What if the God bacteria, the one that makes us calm, smart, and resilient, is supposed to be inside us? What if our ancestors had it in spades and we've accidentally starved it out of our systems? This is called the hygiene hypothesis in medical journals, but let's call it what it really is. We've become sterile, and sterility is making us sick. Let me give you an example. There's a study that compared kids who grew up on farms to kids who grew up in cities. The farm kids, who were constantly exposed to soil, animals, and dirt, had drastically lower rates of anxiety, depression, and asthma. When they tested the farm kids' microbiomes, they found huge colonies of Mycobacterium vaccae. The city kids? Almost none. The farm kids' brains were literally wired differently, more resilient, calmer under pressure. Now here's the wild part. Researchers took that finding and applied it to trauma. They took rats, stress the rats, give them PTSD-like symptoms. One group gets the bacteria before the stressful event. One group gets nothing. The group that got the bacteria, they didn't develop PTSD. The bacteria acted like a shield. It changed their brain chemistry just enough that the trauma didn't stick the way it normally would. Let that sink in. A bacteria found in dirt might be a natural prophylactic against post-traumatic stress. If that's true, and the evidence is pointing that way, then we're not just dealing with a mood booster. We're dealing with something that could fundamentally change how we treat mental health. But I know what some of you are thinking. Okay, cool, so I'll just go eat some dirt. Don't. I mean, technically that would work, but here's the nuance. The bacteria doesn't just survive in your gut, it thrives there. But it needs the right environment. If your gut is a war zone from processed foods, antibiotics, and stress, the bacteria won't stick around. You can't just take a probiotic pill of this stuff and call it a day, not yet anyway. There are no FDA-approved supplements for it. The trials are still early. But you can do something else, something that might be even more effective. You can change your relationship with dirt. Think about the last time you were truly outside, not walking on a sidewalk, not sitting on a manicured lawn sprayed with chemicals. I mean in the dirt, hands in the soil, breathing in that earthy smell, that geosmin. That smell, that's the bacteria. When you smell rain on dry ground, that's the God bacteria releasing spores. We've been romanticizing that smell for centuries. Poets write about it. We call it petrichor. We associate it with peace, with calm, with renewal. We had no idea we were smelling the very thing that was making us feel that way. It's almost poetic, isn't it? We thought the peace came from the rain, but it came from the response to the rain, from the soil waking up, from the microbes asking to come back inside us. So here we are in the year 2024, living in a world where we're more connected than ever before, yet more anxious, depressed, and lonely than any generation before. We've been looking for answers in the wrong places. We've been looking at our phones, at our diets, at our childhood trauma. All of those matter, don't get me wrong, but we've ignored the foundation. We've ignored the fact that we are biological beings first, and biology has a vote. A bacteria the size of a speck of dust has a vote on your happiness. It sounds humiliating. It sounds like we're not in control. But maybe that's the point. Maybe the path to control isn't about sanitizing our lives until there's nothing left. Maybe it's about surrendering to the ecosystem we evolved in. Maybe it's about